Hello, I'm Susan Elliott, the News and Special Reports Editor for Musical America. Today, we're going to speak with Jenny Bilfield. Jenny is the President and CEO of Washington Performing Arts. She's coming up on her 9th anniversary there, and her background is very impressive in the sense that she is the former president of the North American division of Boosey and Hawkes Publishers, and subsequent to that became the CEO of Stanford Lively Arts out in California. She's going to tell us a little bit about the transition that WPA had to make into digital and about the operational challenges involved in not having its own venue and having to move about from one to another in the DC area. Hi, Jenny. Good to see you again.
Hi, Susan. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, of course. So this has been quite a journey the last couple of years. I guess maybe we should start with talking a little bit about before and after, so that we can introduce people to what the Washington Performing Arts was like before the pandemic.
Yeah.
What it is now. So fire away, tell me all about it.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because in many ways, the pandemic has only challenged us to focus even more intensively on our mission. I mean, the mission has really endured and been very solid throughout this incredible time of organizational transformation. Before the pandemic, Washington Performing Arts, founded in 1965-66 by Patrick Hayes and the eminent baritone Todd Duncan, who was our first chairman of the board. He originated the role of Porgy in Porgy and Bess. This remarkable organization was built on a foundation of inclusivity and representation and evolved into an incredibly robust presenter of many different art forms, grounded in classical music, but very responsive to the different genres and cultures in the Washington, D.C. region. Gospel became a very important component of Washington Performing Arts with a program started 30 years ago by Doug Wheeler. Arts education was initiated in just the very first years of Washington Performing Arts, and it's now evolved into a program with the DC Public Schools and 100 different schools. So in many ways, the foundational work of Washington Performing Arts has been in service to the arts, in service to our community, and has not required the owning and operation of a venue. We're quite unique in that. We often say the city is our stage, so we can be nimble, present in many different venues, and always be responsive to the audiences and to the artists as we build a program. So before the pandemic, we were doing that, throughout the year, live performances in in many different venues, 11 different venues in some seasons, ranging from 300 seats to 2,600 seats, from the Library of Congress to Strathmore to Sixth and I to the Kennedy Center. We were in classrooms, and through our Mars Arts DC initiative, we were performing all over the city, focusing on local artists and local businesses, local venues. When the pandemic hit, we had to completely reimagine our presenting, as did every other arts organization in the world. But for us, it wasn't as much about shutting down a venue as converting and transposing what we did, every day with performance, with arts education, to a digital form. Now, at the time that we were evaluating, like everyone else, how we would evolve the organization, we decided to really plant a flag very quickly in terms of digital presenting. In fact, we were bolstered by an extremely quick turnaround that we did around our annual gala. It was supposed to be on March 14th, Saturday, March 14th, 2020. And on Thursday, maybe it was Wednesday, the 11th, in the afternoon, we made the decision to not go ahead with a 600-person live event, but to reimagine it as a virtual gala. We
Right.
switched venue, we switched format. We basically decided to make live TV in a matter of 72 hours. Our artists were in place, our host was in place, and we moved to the Salamander Resort out in Virginia and basically invented this format as a team with our partners and decided to take a leap.
Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Washington Performing Arts Virtual Gala.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle Miller, and I am thrilled to be here with you at the beautiful Salamander Hotel and Resort here in Middleburg, Virginia, for the Washington Performing Arts Annual Gala. It's happening tonight.
I can be anything, 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 oh, anything I can do, I can be.
Despite the fact that it came from incredible stress and trauma of the pandemic and all of the huge inequities that we saw emerge, was actually an incredible creative challenge as a leader. And I loved that challenge as much as I was exhausted emotionally by it. It was a moment for us to, in many ways, learn from, and having powered through, continuing to power through, take components of going forward. We created a series called Home Delivery Plus, and we focused first on the unique programs that artists were developing, but then in many cases, we brought the artists to Washington. So whether it was Elisa Weilerstein at the Terrace Theater or Janae Bridges at Sixth and I, Sean Jones and Brene Ali at Sixth and I, or in cases where the artists couldn't come because of pandemic restrictions, recording them in Taiwan or in New York.
Thinking about Taiwan, I mean, if you're going to be recording somebody in Taiwan and they don't have anything in their, back pocket to use for technology-wise.
Well, actually, so what was really interesting is Jenny Lin actually, so she has residences in both the United States and in Taiwan. She was in Taiwan. We had wanted to present her that season, and she was able to arrange with Wei Wu Ying, the magnificent concert hall and arts presenter, to take over one of their venues and to film there. So our team was here working, in the after hours, some sort of 10 p.m. On, and they were working obviously a different part of the day, but there was a camera crew, there was gorgeous lighting and attention to detail. And her event was actually the first of our Home Delivery Plus. So we used it as an opportunity to take people on a little bit of a tour of Wei Wu Ying, the backstage, the path through the dressing rooms and onto the stage. It's such a magnificent space architecturally, and we have such a wonderful, strong relationship with the Taiwanese cultural and economic organization here in Washington, that we use it as a chance to, as an opportunity to shed a light on some of the global programming that we do. But every single program we did seemed to have a theme or variation that took us way off road. And we, at a certain point, we stopped thinking about transposing live to digital and began to think in digital. And that was a really significant transformation for us, not just, okay, this is a hovering place where we just keep, waiting for the moment to go live. We made the decision really early on. I will tell you that many managers were not happy with us when we made the decision to advance with an all digital season. The early conversations were pretty painful because there was concern that we had preempted, we'd made a preemptive decision before we could really see how the virus was developing. Many people were concerned that, by going digital 6 months, 9 months, 12 months before an agreed date, that we were jumping the gun. And on the other hand, we're not epidemiologists. We did not want to make promises and commitments unless we were absolutely certain. And rather than roll up to the date of a performance and then flip the switch to go virtual, thought, okay,
Right.
we're going to use this as a chance to do something deeper. We're going to call the question now and design a completely new season and not subscribe to magical thinking.
The operations department of
Mhm.
your organization having to move, and not just move, but rent out, find the specs, set up whatever has to happen to get, to do the load in and all that sort of thing. I mean, that must be enormous since you don't have a specific venue that you work out of.
Yeah, it is enormous. And I have to say, Samantha Pollock, who's our director of programming, in addition to bringing, enormous capabilities to that extremely complex process of scheduling and matching artists with venue and project to venue,
Right.
had to take on all of the very complex details of licensing, because we were licensing work. We were asking artists for the opportunity and the permission to stream. And these were not elements of a typical contract. So once we went into digital realm, we and many other organizations were faced with this reality. And as a former music publisher, this is a very potent and pertinent area of the protection of artists' intellectual property. And in many ways, our entire world was having to reevaluate this. It's wonderful when we imagine all of this great access that we have via different virtual platforms, but artists need to be paid, composers need to be paid for their intellectual property. So much is free that one has, many people have this sense of distance from exactly how the economics work. And that was a very complex layer that kept our very wonderful board members and colleagues very busy. And that's something that Samantha moved into with gusto and coordinated to a very fine detail.
Is it safe to say that most of your presentations have as much of a local focus as they do an artistic? In other words, if an orchestra comes in under your rubric, there's always going to be, in most cases, there's going to be a local sort of community in-reach effort as well. You're going to ask your artists to almost literally participate in locally, not just blow into town, sing a few bars, and then hop on the bus kind of thing.
When time, as time permits, absolutely. I think with orchestras, sometimes those performances are so tightly scheduled that it precludes that very immediate connection. However, when we work with orchestras to establish programs, that's where some really interesting pre and post, and frankly, night of activity can happen. For example, given that we present a number of international orchestras and we have relationships with the local embassies, the opportunity to highlight some of the cultural connections with the cultural attaches and with the diplomatic staff through our embassy adoption schools, which are 5th and 6th grade, where 5th and 6th grade classes connect with an embassy and learn about the culture for the whole year. There are many different ways that we can amplify a visit, even if the artist is not able to stay.
I need to ask you the burning question of where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
And you all have been balancing, or are you doing any more digital programming in this season?
Yeah.
And so how do you see us as an industry? How do you see us moving out of this period that we've been through?
Well, we have actually done digital programming. It's interesting. We made a commitment to go back fully live because there is this, I think, false assumption that we can all be hybrid. We can have it available on film and in person, and the expense of doing really high quality digital programs alongside live, unless you have your own venue and a very unique setting and arrangements on the technical side, it is incredibly expensive to do well. And it's very difficult to monetize and to recapture any of the any of the revenue without significant sponsorship. So that was an interesting learning. However, we have continued, especially with the progression of the pandemic, to do our arts education programs in the schools, both live and digitally, because every one of the schools we're in is going through a different phase in terms of their schedule, in class, out of class. So that, I believe, will stay. Our ability to flex, our teaching artists' ability to flex between digital and live will continue. Our gospel choir continues to rehearse online and in person, so that nimbleness will continue. For an arts presenter who presents artists who travel to many different organizations versus an orchestra that is uniquely that orchestra in their home venue, the digital programming that we do really has to be customized and unique, and not simply a replication of what audiences can hear in other places. So for our future, it is a hybrid approach in the sense that we will continue to do some digital programming across our gospel education and presented performances, whether it's local artists or visiting artists, but with the proviso that they are truly, whatever is released digitally will be truly unique and not replicable if it's available to the public. Well, I also think that one of the great messages or experiences that we had during the pandemic, the great lessons, is that mission matters. Relationships and partnerships are truly vital. And by that, I don't mean only institutional partnerships, but partnerships that we have and relationships that we develop with our patrons as well. For a mission-based organization like ours, the support we received philanthropically enabled us to continue and thrive, even though we had a significantly reduced budget and a very different way of expressing our mission.
And your annual budget under normal circumstances, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, so well, pre-pandemic, we would range from 7.1 to 7.8 million. Again, bringing certain orchestras and artists will, the budget will calibrate accordingly.
Right.
During the pandemic, we went from about 7.3 to 4.7 million. And now we're around 6 million. So we're building back.
Thank you so much. And wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Going forward. And I hope to see you around the campus if we ever all get to travel again.
We will. I will see you soon in person for real. Thank you for having me, Susan.